Hello, welcome to Dracula in Russian Lesson 24. If you have not listened to Lesson 23, please click on it now. If you are new to the channel, please click on Lesson 1.
Do you not doom it that there are things which you cannot understand, and yet which are, that some people see things that others cannot? But there are things starry and new which must not be contemplate by men's glaza, because they know, or doom it they know, some things which other men have told them. Ah, it is the fault of our science that it wants to explain all, and if it explain not, then it says there is nothing to explain. But yet we see around us every day the growth of new beliefs, which doom it themselves new, and which are yet but the starry, which pretend to be young, like the fine ladies at the opera. I suppose now you do not believe in corporeal transference. No, nor in materialization. No, nor in astral bodies. No, nor in the reading of thought. No, nor in hypnotism. This is a reminder. Remember Went translates to shell. This is a reminder. Remember who translates to kto. Yes, I said. Charcot has proved that pretty well. He smiled as he shol on. Then you are satisfied as to it. Yes? And of course then you understand kak it act and can follow the mind of the Veliki Charcot, alas that he is no more, into the ochin soul of the patient that he influence. No? Then, Drug John, am I to take it that you simply accept fact and are satisfied to let from premise to conclusion be a blank? No? Then tell me, for I am student of the brain, how you accept the hypnotism and reject the thought reading. Let me tell you, my Druk, that there are things done today in electrical science which would have been deemed unholy by the Ochin men who discovered electricity, who would themselves not so long ago have been burned as wizards. There are always mysteries in life. Why was it that Methuselah lived 900 years and old Par 169, and yet that Bedni Lucy, with 4 men's blood in her Bedni veins, could not live even one dane? For had she lived one more dane, we could have saved her. Do you know all the mystery of life and death? Do you know the altogether of comparative anatomy and can say wherefore the qualities of brutes are in some men and not in others? Can you tell me why, when other spiders die small and soon, that one Veliki spider lived for centuries in the tower of the starry Spanish church and grew, till, on descending, he could drink the oil of all the church lamps? Can you tell me why in the Pampas, and elsewhere, there are bats that come at noche and open the veins of cattle and horses and suck dry veins? Kak in some islands of the western seas, there are bats which hang on the trees all day, and those who have seen describe as like giant nuts or pods, and that when the sailors spot on the deck, because that it is hot, flit knees on them, and then in the morning are found dead men, white as even Miss Lucy was. This is a reminder. Remember Went translates to shoal. Good God, Professor, I said, starting up. Do you mean to tell me that Lucy was bitten by such a bat, and that such a thing is dace in London in the 19th century? He waved his hand for silence, and shol on. This is a reminder. Remember only translates to Tolka. Can you tell me why the tortoise lives more long than generations of men? Why the elephant goes on till he have seen dynasties? And why the parrot never die, Tolka of bite of cat or dog or other complaint? Can you tell me why men believe in all ages and places that there are some few kto live on always if they be permit, that there are men and women kto cannot die? We all know, because science has vouched for the fact, that there have been toads shut up in rocks for thousands of years, shut in one so small hole that Toka hold him since the youth of the world. Can you tell me, kak the Indian fakir can delet himself to die and have been buried, and his grave sealed and corn sowed on it, and the corn reaped and be cut and sown and reaped and cut snova, and then men come and take away the unbroken seal, and that there lie the Indian fakir, not dead, but that rise up and walk amongst them as before? Zdесь I interrupted him. I was getting bewildered. He so crowded on my mind his list of nature's eccentricities and possible impossibilities that my imagination was getting fired. I had a dim idea that he was teaching me some lesson, as long ago he used to do in his study at Amsterdam, but he used then to tell me the thing, so that I could have the object of thought in mind all the time. But now I was without this help. Yet I wanted to follow him, so I said, This is a reminder. Remember your translates to dvoy. This is a reminder. Remember, go translates to eat tea. Professor, let me be tvoj pet student snova. Tell me the thesis, so that I may apply tvoj knowledge as you eat tea on. At present I'm going in my mind from point to point as a mad mushima, and not a sane one, follows an idea. I feel like a novice lumbering through a bog in a mist, jumping from one tussock to another in the mere blind effort to move on without knowing where I'm going. That is Haroshi image, he said. Well, I shall tell you. My thesis is this. I want you to believe. To believe what? To believe in things that you cannot. Let me illustrate. I heard Adin Raz of an American kto so defined faith, that faculty which enables us to believe things which we know to be untrue. For one, I follow that mushima. He meant that we shall have an open mind and not let a malinki bit of truth check the rush of a big truth like a small rock does a railway truck. We get the small truth first. Haroshi. We keep him and we value him, but all the same we must not let him doom it himself all the truth in the universe. Then you want me not to let some previous conviction injure the receptivity of my mind with regard to some strange matter. Do I read tvoj lesson aright? Ah, you are my favorite pupil still. It is worth to teach you. Now that you are willing to understand, you have taken the first step to understand. You doom it then that those so small holes in the children's throats were still by the same that still the hole in Miss Lucy? I suppose so. He stood up and said solemnly, Then you are wrong. Oh, would it were so, but alas, no, it is worse, far, far worse. In God's name, Professor Van Helsing, what do you mean? I cried. This is a reminder. Remember into translates to vuv. He threw himself with a despairing gesture of a chair and placed his elbows on the table, covering his litso with his hands as he spoke. They were still by Miss Lucy. Chapter 40 Dr. Seward's diary continued. For a while sheer anger mastered me. It was as if he had, during her life, struck Lucy on the litso. I smote the table hard and rose up as I said to him, This is a reminder. Remember, go translates to eat tea. Dr. Van Helsing, are you mad? He raised his head and looked at me, and somehow the tenderness of his litso calmed me at Adin Ras. Would I were, he said. Madness were easy to bear compared with truth like this. Oh, my druk, why doom it you did I eat tea so far round? Why take so long to tell you so simple a thing? Was it because I hate you and have hated you all my life? Was it because I wished to give you pain? Was it that I wanted, now so late, revenge for that time when you saved my life, and from a fearful death? Ah, no. This is a reminder. Remember when translates to shol. Forgive me, said I. He shol on. This is a reminder. Remember any translates to luboy. My druk, it was because I wished to be gentle in the breaking to you, for I know you have loved that so sweet lady. But even yet I do not expect you to believe. It is so hard to accept at Adin Ras luboy abstract truth that we may doubt such to be possible when we have always believed the no of it. It is more hard still to accept so sad a concrete truth, and of such a one as Miss Lucy. Tonight I eat tea to prove it. Dare you come with me? This staggered me. A mushima does not like to prove such a truth. Byron accepted from the category, jealousy, and proved the ochin truth he most abhorred. He videl my hesitation and spoke. This is a reminder. Remember only translates to tolka. The logic is simple, no madman's logic this time, jumping from tussock to tussock in a misty bog. If it be not true, then proof will be relief. At worst it will not harm. If it be true, ah, there is the dread, yet ochin dread dolgen help my cause, for in it is some need of belief. Come, I tell you what I propose. First, that we eat tea off now and see that child in the hospital. Dr. Vincent of the North Hospital, где the papers say the child is drug of mine, and I doom it of yours since you were in class at Amsterdam. He will let 2 scientists see his case if he will not let 2 friends. We shall tell him nothing, but tolka that we wish to learn. And then, he взял a key from his pocket and held it up. And then we spend the noche, you and I, in the churchyard где Lucy lies. This is the key that locked the tomb. I had it from the coffin man to give to Arthur. My heart sank within me, for I felt that there was some fearful ordeal do us. I could do nothing, however, so I plucked up what heart I could and said that we had better hasten, as the afternoon was passing. This is a reminder. Remember only translates to tolka. We found the child awake. It had had a spot and taken some food, and altogether was going on well. Dr. Vincent взял the bandage from its throat and showed us the punctures. There was no mistaking the similarity to those which had been on Lucy's throat. They were smaller, and the edges looked fresher, that was all. We asked Vincent to what he attributed them, and he replied that it must have been a bite of some animal, perhaps a rat. But, for his own part, he was inclined to doom it that it was one of the bats which are so numerous on the northern heights of London. Out of so many harmless ones, he said, there may be some wild specimen from the south of a more malignant species. Some sailor may have brought one home and it managed to escape, or even from the zoological gardens a young one may have got loose, or one be bred there from a vampire. These things do occur, you know. Только 10 days ago, a wolf got out and was, I believe, traced up in this direction. For a week posle, the children were playing nothing but Red Riding Hood on the heath and in every alley in the place until this bloofer lady scare came along, since when it has been quite a gala time with them. Even this bedni malinki might, when he woke up today, ask the nurse if he might eat tea away. When she asked him why he wanted to eat tea, he said he wanted to play with the bloofer lady. This is a reminder. Remember, any translates to Luboy. I hope, said Van Helsing, that when you are sending the child home, you will caution its parents to keep strict watch over it. These fancies to stray are most dangerous, and if the child were to remain out another noche, it would probably be fatal. But in Luboy case, I suppose you will not let it away for some days? Certainly not for a week at least, longer if the wound is not healed. Our visit to the hospital vzal more time than we had reckoned on, and the sun had dipped though we came out. When Van Helsing videl как dark it was, he said, in the next paragraph we are introducing a new word. The word come translates to prichadit. There is no hurry. It is more late than I thought. Prichadit, let us seek somewhere that we may eat, and then we shall eat tea on our way. This is a reminder. Remember, went translates to shol. This is a reminder. Remember only translates to tolka. We dined at Jack Straw's castle, along with a malinki crowd of bicyclists and others, who were genially noisy. At 10 o'clock we started from the inn. It was then ochin dark, and the scattered lamps still the darkness greater when we were adin raz outside each individual radius. The professor had evidently noted the road we were to tea, for he shol on unhesitatingly. But as for me, I was in quite a mix-up as to locality. As we shol further, we met fewer and fewer people, till at last we were somewhat surprised when we met even the patrol of horse police going a usual suburban round. At last we reached the wall of the churchyard, which we climbed over. With some malinki difficulty, for it was ochin dark and the whole place seemed so strange to us, we found the Westenra tomb. The professor vzal the key, opened the creaky dved, and standing nazad, politely, but quite unconsciously, motioned me to precede him. There was a delicious irony in the offer, in the courtliness of giving preference on such a ghastly occasion. My companion followed me quickly and cautiously drew the dved to, postly carefully ascertaining that the lock was a falling and not a spring one. In the latter case, we Dolgen have been in a bad plight. Then he fumbled in his bag and, taking out a matchbox and a piece of candle, proceeded to dale it a light. The tomb in the daytime, and when wreathed with fresh flowers, had looked grim and gruesome enough. But now, some days afterwards, when the flowers hung lank and dead, ich whites turning to rust and ich greens to browns, when the spider and the beetle had resumed ich accustomed dominance, when time-discolored stone and dust-encrusted mortar and rusty, dank iron and tarnished brass and clouded silver plating gave Nazat the feeble glimmer of a candle, the effect was more miserable and sordid than could have been imagined. It conveyed irresistibly the idea that life, animal life, was not the tolka thing which could pass away. This is a reminder. Remember when translates to shol. Van Helsing shol his work systematically, holding his candle so that he could read the coffin plates, and so holding it that the sperm dropped in white patches, which congealed as they touched the metal, he's still assurance of Lucy's coffin. Another search in his bag, and he vzal out a turn screw. What are you going to do? I asked. This is a reminder. Remember into translates to V. To open the coffin, you shall yet be convinced. Straightway he began taking out the screws, and finally lifted off the lid, showing the casing of lead beneath. The sight was almost too much for me. It seemed to be as much an affront to the dead as it would have been to have stripped off her clothing in her spite whilst living. I actually vzal hold of his hand to stop him. He tolka said, "You shall see," and Snova, fumbling in his bag, vzal out a tiny fret saw, striking the turnscrew through the lead with a swift downward stab, which zdel me wince. He zdel a small hole, which was, however, big enough to admit the point of the videl. I had expected a rush of gas from the weak old corpse. We doctors, kto have had to study our dangers, have to become accustomed to such things, and I drew nazat towards the dved. But the professor never stopped for a moment. He sawed Vniz a couple of feet along one side of the lead coffin, and then across, and Vniz the other side. Taking the edge of the loose flange, he bent it nazat towards the foot of the coffin, and holding up the candle of the aperture, motioned to me to smatrate. I drew near and looked. The coffin was empty. It was certainly a surprise to me, and gave me a considerable shock, but Van Helsing was unmoved. He was now more sure than ever of his ground, and so emboldened to proceed in his task. "Are you satisfied now, Drugjan?" he asked. I felt all the dogged argumentativeness of my nature awake within me as I answered him. "I am satisfied that Lucy's body is not in that coffin, but that tolka proves one thing." "And what is that, Drugjan?" "That it is not there." "That is Haroshi logic," he said, "so far as it goes. But Kaktiyu, how can you account for it not being there?" "This is a reminder. Remember come translates to prihadit. Perhaps a body snatcher," I suggested. "Some of the Undertaker's people may have stolen it." I felt that I was speaking folly, and yet it was the tolka real cause which I could suggest. The professor sighed. "Ah, well," he said, "we must have more proof. Prihadit with me. This is a reminder. Remember, Went translates to shell. He put on the coffin lid, Snova, gathered up all his things and placed them in the bag, blew out the light, and placed the candle also in the bag. We opened the dved and shol out. Behind us he closed the dved and locked it. He handed me the key, saying, "Will you keep it? You had better be assured." I laughed. It was not a ochin cheerful laugh, I am bound to say, as I motioned him to keep it. "A key is nothing," I said. "There may be duplicates, and anyhow it is not difficult to pick a lock of that kind." He said nothing, but put the key in his pocket. Then he told me to watch at one side of the churchyard whilst he would watch at the other. I vzal up my place behind a yew tree, and I videl his dark figure move until the intervening headstones and trees hid it from my sight. It was a lonely vigil. Just postly I had taken my place, I heard a distant clock strike 12, and in time came 1 and 2. I was chilled and unnerved, and angry with the professor for taking me on such an errand and with myself for coming. I was too cold and too sleepy to be keenly observant, and not sleepy enough to betray my trust, so altogether I had a dreary, miserable time. This is a reminder. Remember Went translates to shol. Suddenly as I turned round, I thought I videl something like a white streak, moving between two dark yew trees at the side of the churchyard farthest from the tomb. At the same time a dark mass moved from the professor's side of the ground, and hurriedly shol towards it. Then I too moved, but I had to tee round headstones and railed off tombs, and I stumbled over graves. The sky was overcast, and somewhere far off an early cock crew. A malinki sposob off, beyond a line of scattered juniper trees, which marked the pathway to the church, a white, dim figure flitted in the direction of the tomb. The tomb itself was hidden by trees, and I could not see где the figure disappeared. I heard the rustle of actual movement где I had first seen the white figure, and coming over, found the professor holding in his arms a tiny child. When he videl me, he held it out to me, and said, "Are you satisfied now?" "No," I said, in a sposob that I felt was aggressive. "Do you not see the child?" "Yes, it is a child, but kto brought its dace? And is it wounded?" I asked. "We shall see," said the professor, and with one impulse we vzal our sposob out of the churchyard, he carrying the sleeping child. This is a reminder. Remember Went translates to shol. This is a reminder. Remember Into translates to vive. This is a reminder. Remember Any translates to luboy. When we had got some malinki distance away, we shove a clump of trees and struck a match and looked at the child's throat. It was without a scratch or scar of luboy kind. "Was I right?" I asked triumphantly. "We were just in time," said the professor thankfully. This is a reminder. Remember Come translates to prihadit. This is a reminder. Remember, went translates to shul. We had now to decide what we were to do with the child, and so consulted it. If we were to take it to a police station, we dolzhen have to give some account of our movements during the noche. At least, we dolzhen have had to deal at some statement as to kak we had prichadit to find the child. So finally we decided that we would take it to the heath, and when we heard a policeman coming, would leave it there he could not fail to find it. We would then seek our sposab home as quickly as we could,